That's on point tonight. Ian Samuel is here with how this will change laws nationwide and the class divide between those who believe in mass gun ownership. But we start with Jay Williams, the New York City public advocate. Good to see you, sir. We appreciate it. I get anything wrong there?
I believe some of your context is not correct. And so this country is about 4% of the world's population, and they own over half of all civilian guns in the entire planet. And yet we seem to think that has nothing to do with the gun violence problem that we have. I will also say every illegal gun that you spoke of was legal at some point. And that is the problem. We don't want to take away the Second Amendment, but it does allow for too many legal guns to be bought and turned into illegal guns. So
fair enough, but is the problem a gun which is an inanimate object, or is the problem someone who possesses that gun illegally? And if it is the latter, why not prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, as the DA in New York City has said he will not do?
No, that's actually not correct. So there is prosecution of guns and gun crimes. The problem is a weapon that is made simply to destroy, maim, and kill. It's not like something that is not made for that. I've seen more regulations on box cutters and spray paint than on guns. And so when we saw 100 million more gun sales in this country during the pandemic, we knew that gun violence would spike. And sure enough, it did. We had record numbers of low murders and shootings in this city between 2018 and 2019. We knew that was going to go up. That also
right, but that went up with this law in place. How is it not that people who are illegally possessing guns are the problem? Alvin Bragg said he would not seek. Hold on, he said he would not seek jail time for people who were felons in possession of a firearm. This is someone who has already been convicted of a felony. They have a firearm. He doesn't prosecute theft of services, trespassing, aggregated unlicensed operation, routine traffic violations, obstructing government, resisting arrest, prosecution, and doesn't ask for jail time for felons who have a gun. Why not deal with the people who illegally have guns before dealing with people who legally have them?
So just to be clear, the people who can do this best is the federal government. And so our illegal guns are coming from places that have the type of laws that New York and others are now going to have. And because it is so easy to purchase a gun, people purchase them and they become illegal.
I still don't understand, though, how going from may issue till shall issue, which is all this Supreme Court decision did, how does that make the streets of New York more dangerous?
Because all of the data shows that the amount of guns in our country, all of the legal guns, increase our gun violence. Guns are a part of gun violence. And I always find it interesting that we try to separate the two. I do believe that there are two pathways here, the supply and demand. So we have to deal with the supply, and we also have to take away the demand and potential to use supply.
So you made a great point where you said we don't want to violate the Second Amendment. Why not do everything possible to take away the demand, to deal with the bad people who use guns illegally before going the route of trying to restrict legal gun ownership?
So we have to do two things at one time. We have to deal with the demand in many different ways. We also have to lessen the supply of guns that are coming into our streets. There is no way that we can deny that any time we see the massive increase in gun sales, we see massive increase in deaths. Last year was the highest record of gun deaths in our country in history. That is connected with the sales of guns. So what is going to happen now is
are we sure it's not the reverse, that people see this huge increase in violence and they see the police stepping back and they see prosecutors not prosecuting crimes and allowing criminals to go free, and then they go buy guns to protect themselves?
What we have seen in New York City, just so you know, because that was a part of the leadership there, when we went from 2012, when there was high gun violence, to 2018, 2019, we put a lot of things into place. And what we saw was a drop in crime, also a drop in use of force of police, also a drop of complaints against police. So there were several things we did at the same time. And then the pandemic hit. And the same people who applaud this kind of ruling, which actually most law enforcement is opposed to the type of ruling that we saw today. But those same folks, instead of working with us to do the things we know work, began to push fear that was occurring this pandemic, which we said was going to happen. We said this pandemic is causing problems in society that we're going to see a spike in crime.
There was a pandemic. There was also the Black Lives Matter movement and the non-prosecution movement and the defund the police movement. Those all had a huge amount to do with the increase in crime too, didn't they?
Police were not defunded in this country. Actually, most police departments have more money now than they did.
No, they were just demonized, but okay.
Well, wait, no. You just said defund. So let's just be clear. Most police departments have more money than they do now. The problem is we try to conflate and confuse issues. We need to have our law enforcement partners with transparency and accountability. But most people, even the folks that agree with you, understand that there are many other agencies that don't have the funding they need. And so when most people say, does a police officer need to be the one responding to the mental health? Well, if the Department of Mental Health has the funding,
all of this, though, seems secondary to this basic issue of how is the real problem in New York City that law-abiding citizens who've never had a felony, who have never had a domestic violence issue, how is them carrying a concealed weapon going to suddenly be the real issue in New York City?
And I've told you there are several problems here. One is we need to be reducing the amount of guns that are on our streets. Whenever they're in increase.
But wouldn't it help to lock up the people who illegally have the guns?
So, yes, there is. You keep saying there's no prosecution for people who have guns.
Alvin Bragg sent a memo. No. Yes, he did. He sent a memo in January where he said, I'm not going to seek jail time for felon in possession.
First of all, he sent out a second memo clarifying what it is that he meant. Second of all, just to be clear, every illegal gun was legal. And so when you increase the amount of guns that are being sold, when you increase the amount of guns that are going to be on the street, that just means more illegal guns. You don't want to admit that, but it is true.
There's no argument that the guns all have to come from somewhere. There's not a mythical factory that decides one or the other. Hey, we got to run, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
I'd love to be back and continue this conversation.
You're welcome anytime. This story's not going away, sadly enough. Good to see you. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.